Welcome back to Mind Diagnosis Lab, Episode 8, Bipolar Disorder, Breaking Down the Highs and Lows. Section 1, What is bipolar disorder? What if your emotions didn't just shift with circumstance, but swung like a pendulum without warning, from soaring energy to crushing despair? Bipolar disorder isn't simply about emotional shifts. It's a group of mood disorders that involve extreme changes in mood, energy, activity levels, and the ability to carry out daily tasks. These shifts are far more severe than the typical ups and downs everyone experiences. They are cyclical, episodic, and often debilitating. The historical context. Bipolar disorder has a long history, though the names and definitions have evolved. What we now call bipolar I disorder was once termed manic depressive illness, a name popularized in the early 20th century. The modern term bipolar was introduced to better reflect the oscillation between two mood extremes. Since then, our understanding has expanded to recognize that not all manic states are the same, and that many people with the disorder experience depression far more often than mania. This shift in understanding led to the formal recognition of bipolar II disorder and cyclothymia, which we'll explore in detail shortly. Defining bipolar disorder. The hallmark feature of bipolar disorders is the presence of manic symptoms, periods of abnormally elevated, expansive, or irritable mood, accompanied by increased activity and impulsive behavior. But this is only half the picture. Most individuals also experience depressive episodes, where the energy disappears, motivation plummets, and life feels not only unmanageable, but often meaningless. That's the essence of bipolar disorder, a serious mood disorder that alters how a person experiences energy, motivation, sleep, and even judgment. The term bipolar reflects these two emotional poles, mania and depression. The DSM-5 recognizes three primary forms of bipolar disorders: 1. Bipolar I disorder, 2. Bipolar II disorder, 3. Cyclothymic disorder, or cyclothymia. While all involve fluctuations in mood, they differ in intensity, duration, and functional impact of manic symptoms. Section 2, Bipolar I disorder, the manic spike. Bipolar I disorder is the most classically recognized version. To be diagnosed, a person must experience at least one full manic episode in their lifetime, regardless of whether they've ever been depressed. What is mania? Mania is not just feeling really good or over-energetic. It is a marked and abnormal state of elevated or irritable mood, lasting at least 1 week, or less if hospitalization is required. It's often accompanied by intense goal-directed activity and behaviors that are uncharacteristic, risky, or even dangerous. Manic episode. Core symptoms. DSM-5 criteria. A manic episode is defined by abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood, increased goal-directed activity or energy, lasting most of the day, nearly every day. During this period, at least 3 or 4, if the mood is only irritable, of the following symptoms must be present: inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, like believing you have superpowers or a divine mission; decreased need for sleep, like sleeping only 2 hours but feeling rested; excessive talkativeness or pressured speech, racing thoughts or flight of ideas; easily distracted; increased goal-directed behavior, social, occupational, or sexual; high-risk activities, like reckless spending, impulsive sex, or unwise investments. These symptoms must lead to significant functional impairment, require hospitalization, or include psychotic features such as hallucinations or delusions. During mania, individuals may become unusually sociable, intrusive, or hyperconfident. Their thoughts might jump rapidly from topic to topic, reflecting the classic flight of ideas. The speech can be hard to interrupt, sometimes filled with jokes, rhymes, or random associations to nearby objects. This high-energy state may initially feel exhilarating. Some people even describe it as euphoric. But it can quickly spiral into impulsivity, rage, or disastrous decisions. People might max out credit cards, engage in risky sex, or drive recklessly with little awareness of consequences. According to a memoir excerpt by Jameson in 1995, "When I'm high, I feel invincible. I spent $30,000 during one episode. I don't remember how." Even after just 1 week of these behaviors, even years ago, a person qualifies for a lifetime diagnosis of bipolar 1 disorder. Section 3. Bipolar 2 disorder. The hidden hypomania. Bipolar 2 disorder is often misunderstood, mistaken either as a milder form of bipolar 1 or as merely moodiness. In reality, it is a distinct and serious condition, defined by its own diagnostic criteria and clinical challenges. Bipolar 2 disorder requires at least one hypomanic episode and at least one major depressive episode. Unlike bipolar 1, full-blown mania never occurs in bipolar 2. Instead, individuals experience hypomania, a less intense but still noticeable mood elevation. Hypomania defined. The prefix hypo means under, so hypomania is under mania. The energy surge is there, but it's not as extreme and doesn't cause severe impairment or hospitalization. There are no psychotic symptoms. To qualify, symptoms must last at least 4 consecutive days, be clearly observable by others, not cause significant dysfunction or require hospitalization. People often feel more productive, charismatic, energetic, and social during hypomania. As one person described, hypomania often feels exhilarating, an experience that has been evocatively described by psychiatrist K. Redfield Jamison, who also lives with bipolar disorder. She wrote, "When you're high, it's tremendous. The ideas and feelings are fast and frequent like shooting stars. The power to captivate others a felt certainty. Sensuality is pervasive, and the desire to seduce and be seduced irresistible. Feelings of intensity, power, well-being, and financial omnipotence pervade one's marrow." Hypomania might even be enjoyable, and it's often missed or mistaken for just being in a good mood. But when it alternates with debilitating depressive episodes, it forms a dangerous cycle. Hypomania may include increased goal-directed behavior, like starting multiple new projects, rapid speech, often difficult to interrupt, decreased need for sleep, feeling rested after just a few hours, grandiosity or inflated self-esteem, distractibility and difficulty maintaining attention, heightened sociability, flirtatiousness, or risky behavior, major depressive episodes in bipolar 2. To meet the diagnostic criteria for bipolar 2, individuals must also experience at least one episode of major depression, lasting at least 2 weeks, and causing significant distress or impairment. These depressive phases are often severe, with profound hopelessness, fatigue, changes in appetite or sleep, and even suicidal ideation. In many cases, the depression in bipolar 2 can be more functionally impairing and longer-lasting than in bipolar 1. Interestingly, depression often precedes the recognition of hypomania in bipolar 2. Many patients are initially diagnosed with unipolar depression, only to have their diagnosis corrected years later, when a hypomanic episode is finally recognized, sometimes retrospectively. An example of this is actress Catherine Zeta-Jones, who publicly discussed her diagnosis with bipolar 2 disorder. Like many, her hypomanic symptoms had gone unnoticed for years because they were overshadowed by her depressive episodes. Why it matters. The risks of misdiagnosis. One of the critical challenges in identifying bipolar 2 disorder is that hypomanic episodes are often underreported or misinterpreted by both patients and clinicians. Unlike mania, which tends to draw attention due to its intensity, hypomania can appear as mere exuberance, confidence, or high productivity. As a result, many individuals with bipolar 2 are misdiagnosed with major depressive disorder and may receive treatments, such as antidepressants, that could destabilize mood and increase the risk of mood cycling. Moreover, although hypomania does not include psychosis or severe dysfunction, the overall course of bipolar 2 disorder can be quite disabling due to the recurrent depressive episodes. It is associated with high rates of functional impairment, interpersonal conflict, and suicide risk. comparable to or even exceeding those seen in bipolar 1. Section 4. Cyclothymic disorder, the chronic roller coaster. Cyclothymic disorder, or cyclothymia, is often overshadowed by its more dramatic mood disorder relatives, bipolar 1 and 2, but it is a distinct and chronically impairing condition in its own right. At its core, cyclothymia is defined by the presence of frequent fluctuations between mild hypomanic and depressive symptoms over an extended period. It involves frequent shifts between mild hypomanic and mild depressive symptoms that don't meet full diagnostic criteria for either mania or depression. According to diagnostic guidelines, cyclothymic disorder is diagnosed when an individual experiences the following for at least 2 years, or 1 year in children or adolescents. Numerous periods of hypomanic symptoms that do not meet full criteria for a hypomanic episode. Numerous periods of depressive symptoms that fall short of criteria for a major depressive episode. The symptoms must be present at least 50% of the time, and there cannot be more than a 2-month stretch of symptom remission. Importantly, the individual must never have met criteria for a full major depressive, manic, or hypomanic episode during this period. The symptoms must cause clinically significant distress or functional impairment in social, occupational, or other critical areas of life. Though the symptoms are less intense, the chronic nature of cyclothymia can severely impact emotional stability and relationships, clinical presentation, and distress. People with cyclothymic disorder may appear outwardly functional, holding jobs, maintaining relationships, and even appearing upbeat or energetic at times. However, the internal experience is one of chronic emotional instability. While full-blown manic episodes typically attract clinical attention due to their intensity, the milder ups and downs of cyclothymia often fly under the radar, leaving individuals to silently grapple with inconsistent energy levels, changes in mood, and unpredictable motivation. For example, during hypomanic periods, a person might feel more sociable, productive, or energized. But this is short-lived and eventually gives way to low mood, lethargy, or pessimism. Unlike bipolar 1 or 2, where mood episodes are clearly delineated, the shifts in cyclothymia can be subtle but continuous, creating a sense of emotional whiplash and chronic dissatisfaction. Over time, this emotional turbulence can take a toll. It may erode self-confidence, strain interpersonal relationships, and lead to difficulties with employment or academic consistency. Loved ones might perceive the individual as moody, unpredictable, or erratic, and the person themselves may struggle to understand or articulate their experience. Differential diagnosis: cyclothymia versus bipolar 1 and 2. Critical part of diagnosing cyclothymia is ruling out bipolar 1 and 2 disorder. Unlike these more severe conditions, people with cyclothymia do not experience full manic, hypomanic, or major depressive episodes. Yet the chronicity of symptoms, often unrelenting for years, makes this condition far from benign. In bipolar 1 disorder, the hallmark is the occurrence of at least one full manic episode, which may or may not be followed by a major depressive episode. Bipolar 2 requires at least one hypomanic episode and one major depressive episode, with no history of full mania. Cyclothymia, by contrast, hovers in the space between these poles, a low-grade but persistent cycling of emotional highs and lows that never reach diagnostic thresholds, yet deeply affect quality of life. Epidemiology and course. Estimates suggest that cyclothymic disorder affects approximately 4% of the population, a higher prevalence than bipolar 1 or 2 disorders. The disorder typically emerges in adolescence or early adulthood, and without intervention, it tends to follow a chronic, lifelong course. Compounding its clinical significance is the fact that individuals with cyclothymia are at increased risk of developing bipolar 1 or 2 disorders later in life. That is, cyclothymia may act as a prodromal phase for more severe bipolar disorders, a warning sign that, if unheeded, can evolve into more disabling conditions. Moreover, even if a full manic or depressive episode never emerges, the persistent emotional instability itself is often enough to significantly disrupt a person's social and occupational functioning. Section 5. The impact and urgency. Why is it so important to understand bipolar disorder accurately? Because misdiagnosis is common. Many people with bipolar 2 are initially diagnosed with unipolar depression, which delays proper treatment. Others may not recognize the manic or hypomanic phases as pathological because they might feel unusually productive, energetic, or confident during those episodes. Some may be labeled simply as moody or sensitive and may not seek treatment unless their symptoms worsen. In clinical settings, it can be easily mistaken for borderline personality disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, or even attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, due to overlapping symptoms like impulsivity, distractibility, and mood shifts. Yet untreated bipolar disorder can wreak havoc, disrupting careers, damaging relationships, increasing the risk of substance abuse, and heightening the chance of suicide. In fact, it's one of the most serious psychiatric conditions in terms of functional disability and mortality. Understanding the disorder is not just about medical classification, it's about early recognition, accurate diagnosis, and timely treatment. A neuropsychiatric disorder. At its core, bipolar disorder is not simply psychological, it's neurobiological. Research shows that it involves altered functioning in key brain regions like the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, dysregulation in neurotransmitter systems, especially dopamine, serotonin, and glutamate, a strong genetic component, with heritability estimates among the highest for any psychiatric disorder. So when someone experiences an episode of mania or depression, it isn't just in their head, it's in their brain's wiring, chemistry, and circuitry. We will continue talking about epidemiology and the consequences of bipolar disorders in the next episode. Stay tuned.